Okay, so first bit is call to order. Since we have a bunch of members on Zoom, we'll do a roll call. So Rich Smith, present.
Phyllis Goodson, present.
Jessica,
Cannon, present.
PJ,
PJ Klein, present.
Sean,
Sullivan, present.
and Valjean.
Valjean Estes, present.
Excellent. Do we have the next order of business is approval of the October minutes?
Well, I don't think I sent the October minutes out. Did I send that?
Not in the agenda packet, I don't believe.
I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, I apologize. I'll have to send them out and approve it.
Okay, we
Next
will do
meeting.
that after the meeting. All right, so we'll move on to item number 1, which is items for recommendation for the 2025 state and federal legislative agenda. So David, do you want to give us a quick run through that? Or
As y'all will recall, I don't know, somewhere around this time last year, or maybe a little bit later. It's actually probably the early part of.
this year.
We were provided what the city's state and federal legislative agenda was going to be, and we had the opportunity to comment, and, you know, we had hoped to perhaps have some things. Apologies. I think that was just me hitting the button, so. Yeah, so this year we're hoping to kind of get a jump start on that and be able to provide some input, some areas that we think would be impactful for us to perhaps provide some comment on. I think I provided a copy of last year's agenda in the agenda packet, just to refresh y'all's memory, kind of the style and type of things that were made it to the agenda. Also included in the actual agenda, just a couple suggested areas, just kind of get our conversation started for some areas that may be, again, that help us reach our goals, as well as would be appropriate for the city to recommend. And with us today is Kara Spencer to, give us some more details and perhaps some guidance.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to talk kind of to the camera and kind of to the people here in the room. My name is Kara Spencer. If I haven't met you, it's very nice to meet you. I'm going to hand something out to these folks, so don't worry if you're not in the room receiving one, because you've got one in really the equivalent in your meeting pamphlet that was attached. So this is just a prettier, more colorful version of our legislative agenda from 2024. And since I have hundreds of these, it was an opportunity to get rid of some instead of throw them away. But really, I want to give kind of an overview of what it is that we talk about when we talk about the legislative agenda, and how you can be influential in helping to shape it. So I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs, and my job is essentially to lobby at the state and federal level for whatever the city of Wilmington needs and wants, and to protect the things that we already have. And all of that changes from election year to election year, but also from moment to moment, depending on the interests of our citizens, the interests of our city council. And it can be something that can change mid-year. So what we do is every year, so I have my marching orders, is we create a legislative agenda. It's something that the Wilmington City Council votes on every usually January. It has been February before, but they essentially vote on these general guidelines and principles so that we have parameters. I have parameters when I go out and have conversations with legislators and policymakers. I don't have to wonder, am I doing the will of the city council? Because I know if it's within the realm of these items that it's 100% okay. So that's why some of them may seem a little vague, because they do need to be flexible and all-inclusive to some degree. If you look through the 2024 legislative agenda, you'll see some items that are interesting to you, such as, and well, we have PFAS on here. We do have just because something doesn't appear here doesn't mean that it's not supported by the council. We are able to kind of decide things as we go throughout the year. But I see that in your notes for the day, it's got a couple of suggested points that could be on our 2025 legislative agenda, such as advocate for advancement of clean energy resources, support economic development opportunities presented by offshore wind projects, and support the NC State Energy Office's Solar for All program. All of those are things that our city council would be able to get behind. So I think that those are very reasonable suggestions. The key is to find a way to meld them into really one and at maximum two points that can be included. So it really does come down to phrasing sometimes, and maybe sometimes it may not be support economic development opportunities presented by offshore wind projects. In that case, in order to avoid any dissension amongst council, I might advocate for the word explore. Because it's very important that we as a city present a united front as we advocate for legislative goals. I really want this agenda, it's important and critical that the agenda pass unanimously. That's why I try to avoid anything, depending on the personalities and interests of our council, I try to avoid anything that may raise question. And a lot of that does come down to interpersonal conversations and talking things over with our individual council members in advance of that vote. So really what I'm here today to do is to ask for your feedback, because you guys have looked at this closely. I've seen the tremendous work that's gone into your various products. You know best what is needed and how to phrase what is needed. And so I just wanted to kind of crowdsource amongst this group some possible items that could be folded into our 2025 legislative agenda. I'll tell you now that I'm due to present that legislative agenda at our second meeting of the new year, which is on January 21st. I will need to have a final version of that agenda before the end of the calendar year, because it's something that I do discuss in depth with our various council members, with the mayor, with Tony Caudill, with our partners at the League of Municipalities and the Metro Mayors Coalition, to be sure that we're on the right track. We do constantly communicate with people like Natalie English. The Chamber of Commerce has their own legislative agenda. We communicate with my counterpart at the county, Tim Buckland, because the county has its own legislative agenda. And we are in so many ways a team, right? And we don't want to work against each other when that's not necessary. So I want to be sure to include your views. I want to be sure to include the things that you've got going. I will be the first to tell you, if it has not been said out loud, I hate to be the one to say it, that support for, see, I even wrote down the most gentle way to say this. Funding for initiatives for solar and other alternative energy sources is likely to be reduced or eliminated in favor of initiatives that are focused on fossil fuels, just because of the outcome of the election. I think that that is something that we have to accept. Wilmington has so many points of pride when it comes to energy and clean transportation. We don't want to take any steps backwards. I don't want to water down any of our legislative goals because of the world around us. Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you. you read us that statement. Where, is that your personal opinion? Is that a statement from city council? Is
No,
that
no,
just
no,
kind of
no,
like
no.
a state of the union, like this
That
is
is-
the reality we're living in, like?
I'll tell you, first of all, my being here today, I am in no way representing the views of the city
Sure.
council. Part of my job is to interface with all of our elected leaders and to keep my fingers on the pulse of the League of Municipalities. We constantly receive various legislative updates and briefings, whether it be from, hired lobbyists, or anyone else. And I would say that I've heard that in so many meetings, that I feel confident in repeating it. One thing that happened last week, I will tell this group about, is on Thursday and Friday, the city of Wilmington was lucky enough to be able to host the annual meeting of the North Carolina Metro Mayors Coalition. And if you don't know what that is, that's completely fine. Nobody has a reason to, except that we do here in Wilmington. We should be very proud of the fact that our Mayor Bill Sappho, is the chair, the state leader of that group, which is to say we have a unique opportunity to exert influence on metropolitan mayors within the state. And when I say metropolitan mayors, I mean mayors of populous cities, who have unique concerns that, Charlotte has a lot of concerns that Charlotte does not have. And so we get together and we try to talk about those concerns. Last week on Thursday, everybody from the Metro Mayors Coalition was invited here to this building where we're sitting now. And we had a lot of discussions. What I did read in my little statement was the kind of thing that we talked about. And I will say that we had a really great briefing by somebody named Zach Ambrose. Does this group know Zach? Yeah,
Very well.
I talked to him this morning too. He gave a great briefing to all of the mayors that were present. And by the way, I know I'm talking like probably way too long, but I really want this group to know.
This is great.
That Zach Ambrose, who runs Ambrose Strategy, which is a consulting firm. Anytime I hear somebody's a consultant, I kind of cringe, but he's a public servant first. He was a Navy officer, and then he was chief of staff to Bev Perdue. Zach is a genius. He also went to MIT for electrical engineering. So Zach, good. Zach told us a little bit about what he saw as the future concerns for energy in North Carolina. And I just want to tell you some of what Zach said, if you don't mind. Do we have time?
Yes.
Okay. I can tell you that one of the conversations that's going to begin soon is about CPACE. And so this group is probably very much aware, and it might be later that y'all are talking about.
I was gonna say, it's
Item
agenda
two.
item number 2.
Okay.
We intend on having a resolution to council at the first meeting in January to support that,
Oh, my God. So we need to talk.
based on actions of this committee.
Are the words I'm saying in this meeting going to be like transcribed word
This
for
is
word?
recorded in
Okay.
public.
Okay, well then I am gonna have a private conversation with you about it. But CPACE, so as you know, it passed in June, and that financing program is being made available to our municipalities. The mayor took a special interest in that at our meeting, and on Thursday had some private discussions with Zach and others about the details and what that would look like if implemented in Wilmington. I think a lot of municipalities have concerns about liability issues, what defaulting on those financial commitments would mean for the city itself. And I think it's important to emphasize to municipalities that there is no liability. That is the thing that's holding people back. And I think that the messaging on that could be clearer. And so educating the city council about the details of that program is important. And what I'll talk to Dave about separate from this meeting is the possibility of having Zach or his colleague brief council at a Monday meeting in January. But maybe there's not time if they're voting, if they're voting first thing of the year, but we'll talk about it.
Okay.
At our last meeting, we had a representative from the Economic Development the people who do the toolkit.
Oh, good.
Larry Price, I'm not sure if you know him.
Okay, I've seen that name. Yeah.
He briefed the group last week or last month about the CPACE program as well.
Do you mean this group or the
Yeah,
council?
this group.
Okay. I feel like council has some questions.
Yeah.
And they're definitely above my pay grade, like
Yeah.
the details, but I want to be sure that we take action, because that is a leadership opportunity for Wilmington.
The county is also working on it as well.
And I think it's not just us as a city of Wilmington that has to come out.
Well,
With
there's
messaging.
issues with CPACE. And what I mean by that is it's not open to government. Like, we can't use it for the city of Wilmington. We can use it as a tool to help others within the city, but you can't use it well, actually the city can't even use it. The county has to approve it. It has to be at the county level, not the city level. But what I mean by issues is we can't use it as this organization, this committee, to lower the carbon intensity of the city's assets. It's not open to government entities. It's only open to public.
Right.
Right. I think ultimately the city can benefit greatly because it's been so successful, like in hotels. I think that there's a good interest in this with like the Chamber of Commerce for the businesses, there's a lot of opportunity to improve, especially with the age of a lot of stuff around Wilmington. So we'll talk about the 7th or the 21st, those meetings and what those will look like. Congratulations on the award from the Department of Energy. Just wanted to say that. And I wanted to tell you, in case you didn't know, our council person, David Joyner, we're very proud of the fact that he is one of 8 or 9 individuals that sit now officially on the governor's Clean Transportation Task Force. That's something that Governor Cooper set up or began to set up about 6 months ago. And I can confirm that Governor or future Governor Stein will be leaning into that, and it will continue. So if you do have the opportunity to congratulate Councilman Joyner on his involvement, that is a unique opportunity for Wilmington as well. And he will be carrying messages to and from Raleigh related to clean transportation.
Can I just make one statement? The 3 bullets that are underneath item 1,
Mhm.
and this is just for the committee's understanding, is that David wrote those.
Yeah, these are conversation starters.
They're just conversation starters for y'all,
Correct.
so that y'all can just use those as a basis to help arrive at where we want, what we're trying to provide to Kara. So.
Sure.
And we did write a letter, I will say, looking at the Solar for All program, the council did write a letter in support of that program, and we would be happy to do that again, I'm sure.
Any questions about anything Cara just shared with us first?
Yes.
Go ahead, PJ.
So obviously you brought up the results of the election, which obviously anybody who works in government affairs or deals with government affairs ever is probably super intrigued on how.
Uh-oh. PJ, you cut out on us. Good.
Oh, no, I wanted to hear that.
He'll come back, I imagine. While we're waiting for PJ to see if he can get back on.
Anybody else?
I was just curious, could you repeat your statement about fossil fuels? You just said something like that, or how did you state it? I can't remember.
Well, this is not an official statement. I would just say that because of the political climate of, especially within the federal government, it could be difficult to advocate successfully for clean energy initiatives as opposed to fossil fuel. And that's just something that's evident to anybody that opens a CNN webpage, so.
My follow-up question for that is, and I get that you're kind of like, don't read too much into this, like this is just a vibe. My question was, is that I know you said that was kind of a result of the discussions within the Metro Mayor's coalition. Is that, was that more just a topic of discussion, like, hey, this is how it seems like it's coming down from on high? This is kind of, like you said, what we see on CNN, like, makes it seem like this? Or is this the feeling of, because of the outcome of the election, both federally and locally, this is how a lot of the metro mayors are beginning to feel, or they feel like this is how the public feels about this?
Oh,
We are shifting our stance that way.
I don't think it's I really hope that, it doesn't, I'm not talking about the citizens or the public or how they feel. And I'm definitely not talking about how any mayors across North Carolina feel.
Okay.
What I do mean is, the makeup of the House and Senate in
Yes,
DC. It is clear to me and anyone with eyes that it's going to be very hard to get support, for certain things.
Yeah, I would say, and I'm not saying that you're not saying this or that you're saying something opposite. My personal opinion on it, is that just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
100%, 100%.
And so I understand that we are now, based on the results of the election, what we in this room would probably choose to advocate for is going to be more of an uphill battle, than it was, last month. But that doesn't necessarily change our position on.
Yes, and that's what I was saying, nothing that happened in November changes the goals of the city of Wilmington, not one bit.
Sure.
And also, whatever this committee decides to put forward as a recommendation, Kara's responsibility is to take that and work with it in the manner that she can.
Sure.
It may not transcribe exactly into the agenda as it has been approved here as
Understood.
well. So,
Very good. And I guess my other question is, does that change, given the nature of where it's now in more of an uphill battle, does that change your position or your perspective, I guess, or process at all on, because I know like you said, part of your job is to make sure that everyone is on the same team and kind of putting together the same message. Does that change at all the way that you're advocating for that message? Does that change at all? Like, because
Not at
Yeah,
all, and
okay.
I'll tell you why. Well, okay, actually, that is an interesting question. So my job is nonpartisan. I should start by saying my job is 100% nonpartisan.
Sure.
And the city of Wilmington is a really unique place in so many ways. One of them is that we are just so thoroughly purple. And we work with leaders, whether they are Democrats or Republicans. My job is to be their friend, to communicate with them, to be sure that they always know what our hopes and dreams are as a community. And more importantly, to be able to, if we see that something is coming up for a vote, we should be able to reach out to our legislators and
Make our voices
heard, be sure to advocate for what is needed to make this a great city. And it does not, I can tell you, it does not matter to me at all. It's just having a good working relationship. So I would say I'm nonpartisan. My job is nonpartisan. The city of Wilmington, at the end of the day, is completely nonpartisan, because we're about getting what Wilmington needs. Yeah. So just doing what we've always done, which is reaching across the aisle. Not that we're on one side of the aisle, it's just
Sure.
wherever we need to reach, we're going to reach there.
Anyone else on Zoom comments before we, or recommended
Or the room.
actions, Jessica? No? Oh, she's good.
I had-
Andrea?
Yes, hi, sorry for being late. I was sitting in a Teams call and was like, when did we move to Teams? And then we sure didn't. So I apologize for that. I think as I joined, I noted that you had a suggestion of using certain terminology. I think you were saying, use the words explore in certain scenarios to kind of help pave the way as we put things forward. Is there any other, from your experience and conversations you've had, anything else that you would, recommend. It doesn't have to be official recommendation or anything, any sort of guidance or anything, that
Or is that part of your job? You know, we just
that
give
would
you.
feel like,
However, it's
I
on
think-
you to finagle it.
I think it is, I would recommend giving me what you think of as ideal. And if in my conversations with individual council members, I begin to see some concern with the wording, then we can either change it, tone it down, amplify it, whatever needs to happen. So I would rely on this group to give me your genie in a bottle version of what you want to see on the legislative agenda. And we'll go from there.
Sound good? Andrea?
yep. And it looks like PJ may have been able to join, so I don't know if there is something he wanted to continue before we move on.
Sure, PJ? Okay, he may still be working on his microphone setup. I do have a question, more for David and Dave. Is the intention, for us to have this discussion now, with Cara here or later? My personal feeling as chairman would be that I would welcome her presence for this discussion. I don't know that you have the time or the interest in it, but I defer to these two as far as what you had intended for this.
Based on Kara's schedule, the sooner the better.
Sure.
So, and no, she's.
I feel like I'm like pop quizzing the group by showing up and saying like, now tell me what you want. No, I think it's important to reflect and to actually craft the language in a way that you feel really reflects what you want. So it's not like you need to tell me right now what you want on the legislative agenda. I would say like my inbox is always open to everybody. And if you would like to contribute, you can go through these guys, or if you have questions about anything I just said, feel free to email me.
Yeah, and our goal is to have them as a committee vote on something they're
Yes.
willing to get behind as a committee.
But that's great, yeah.
And at which point we provide that to you.
This
They
is our
meet-
recommendation as a committee.
Right.
But you were hoping to get things by the end of the month though, which our next meeting's not until.
Early January.
I don't foresee that being a problem for us, unless there's a legit, like a administrative restrictions on that. I mean, I think we can come up with something.
If we don't arrive at that today, we can always go through that email process.
And I wasn't trying to rush the committee into like, hey, we need to come up with something in the next hour, but more so long as there's no administrative issue with it, but from a procedural standpoint, we would welcome your presence within the discussions, I guess.
Sure. Sure, I feel like I just totally hijacked your meeting, so.
No, this
I'm
is,
happy to come back if
we,
you allow me.
we planned for this, so that's all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm happy to.
We did not expect
Well,
this to be a 15
And
minute
they,
deal.
after last year where we, kind of after the fact got the agendas, like they very much wanted to be involved in this process. So this is.
And I'll be very honest with you, professionally, I should apologize because last year, my father passed away in March, so I was on FMLA during this entire process. And I'm lucky to have a boss, the city manager, Tony Caudle, who not only finessed a new legislative agenda, but presented it on my behalf to council, which is very out of the ordinary. Tony Caudle, that was a big favor. So I did not have the opportunity to meet with this group in advance of last year's agenda. But I think this is something that we should do annually. And I think that it's important that you're a part of crafting the parts that relate to what you think about day in and day out.
Sure. PJ, I see your mic is active. Are you able to check windows?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know what happened. I had to get off of my work profile and onto my personal profile. I don't know what happened with the meeting. So obviously we know that the federal agenda currently is to produce more fossil fuels, as you mentioned, more energy through fossil fuels. And, the goal of our committee is to ensure that we are reducing the carbon intensity And, we always knew that natural gas is going to be part of the mix, the fuel mix. It kind of has to be. It has to be dispatchable. The only way you can really use renewables as dispatchable is when you have batteries, and you're only allowed to be dispatchable of so much percentage. It's very convoluted. And so we know that at the federal level. At the state level, I think it's tomorrow. We have this Senate Bill 382 that is going to attempt to change the makeup of the Utilities Commission. And I don't know how much that has to play in with, what the future looks like at the Utilities Commission and what the carbon plan looks like in the future. But I'm not sure if that came up in conversation with the Zach or any of the other, the meetings that we had, that you guys had last week with the other mayors.
I'll be honest, I was the meeting planner and was out of the room dealing with various things a lot of the time. So I didn't hear everything that happened during the ZAC meeting. It's possible they had that conversation. But I know that was still, changes were still being made to the changes were still being made to that bill at the end of last week. And so I'm not even sure at this moment what is included in that bill. So I know that there are attempts being made to change the Utilities Commission. I know that it's going to have an impact. I really can't say more than that.
Okay, yeah, well, 382, it was passed by the House and Senate. It was vetoed by Governor Cooper already. And they've already did the Senate override, and they're supposed to do the House override tomorrow. It's on the calendar for it. So I don't know if there's any going to be additional change. I'm not sure if they can or will, but we are going to see a change to the Utilities Commission if the veto override in the House happens. But I don't know what the outcome ends up being. So that's something we need to monitor. We need to, the state treasurer is going to get one of the nominees if the veto override happens, and you will have at some point a Republican Utilities Commission.
What is your, I should just say, what is your main concern with the new makeup of the Utilities Commission? Or what is something that you want to protect that you see as being at risk as a result?
Yeah, what I believe could transpire is changes to what happens with the carbon plan and what goals that have been set out as part of House Bill, the carbon plan that was just recently approved, or the last order that just came out on the CIRP, the Integrated Resource Plan with the carbon plan combination that came out, I think it was Friday before the election. How do those orders look in the future if the makeup of the Utilities Commission changes? I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. It is something that I believe as the city, or at least the Clean Energy Committee, we need to be looking at it, because here's my belief or what I think could transpire. The scenario, say a Republican Utilities Commission sits there and they say, we are delaying, or we are going to slow the pace, or we're going to change the percentages, or whatever they make the changes to what the last House bill was that initiated the carbon plan. The city of Wilmington still has goals and objectives we have to hit. And now, instead of those goals and objectives being achieved by changes that are made at the utility scale level, that would force the city to make investments if they're still going to hold to those commitments. Right now, we're really relying upon, at least on the energy side, we're relying upon the utility to make most of those changes to the benefit of the city. The transportation is a different story, but just the energy component. And so I think it's something that we need to watch, because if there is some delay or change to that carbon plan, the city is going to have to make investments if they're still going to adhere to those objectives and goals. Does that make sense, David and Dave?
It does, and, in the past, we did provide comments to the Utility Commission, well, I say we, the city, drafted a public comment letter to the commission. That process definitely could have gone smoother from our side of things, I think, as far as just, discussion and outreach beforehand, but I think that would be something this group would support. Again, it's just the city being able to provide, when the Utilities Commission is asking for public comment. And that's one thing Zach and his group, the city's initiative that I participate in. That group helped kind of draft a joint letter from a number of cities. We kind of backed away from that and Wilmington sent its own letter, but that would be something I think that this group would be interested in. Again, it's just some kind of a public comment in regard to Utility Commission actions and how it relates to our us achieving our clean energy and greenhouse gas reduction goals.
Did you call?
I'm sorry, I do have a comment about us commenting on open rate cases. When we filed that comment, that goes into a public comment file. Just like if I decide to send a letter to the Utilities Commission, we as the city of Wilmington are not an intervening party, which means we don't have a seat at the table. And I don't know if there's an organization. I know there's organizations that intervene in these rate cases or hearings.
Yeah, some of the cities did choose to be interveners. I think Asheville and Charlotte, in this latest case as well, they were interveners.
Yeah, so that's maybe something the city may want to consider if it's something that we want to advocate for or against. If the city wants to intervene, they have to be an intervening party. Public comments just go into a public comment file. I'm not saying they don't look at it. It just doesn't carry the same weight as the intervening party.
Right.
So I guess my next question for the group would be, do we want to have a discussion right now about what things we would like to see on the legislative agenda, so that we can work towards making recommendations for Cara on what to include? I mean, I know this is typically much harder for us via email and that kind of thing. So it's something I think is probably a worthwhile exercise now.
Maybe just some general areas.
And typically the committees, for the most part, of a similar mind, so I don't see a lot of dissension or, controversial or conversation here. I can just say from me personally, my main priority is to advocate for the you can say exploration, you can say support of the offshore wind industry here. I have seen, we have a member, Sean is a member of the offshore wind industry. He's a project manager. I can tell you from having family in different states on the East Coast, I've seen how the process works and the state of things in different cities and states across the Eastern Seaboard as relates to offshore wind. And one thing that resonated with me is we have a offshore wind organization in North Carolina called NC Towers. One of their big points was that legislator, like from a municipality standpoint, the best thing you can do is be the first and the loudest one in the room. Because once you get behind the 8 ball as far as messaging goes, if someone else introduces a narrative, then you are constantly fighting that narrative. And so in my opinion, whether it's through educating city council or meeting with city council or et cetera, my number one priority is that Wilmington doesn't miss the bus for offshore wind. Not just from this is good for our clean energy standpoint, from an economic standpoint. Charleston is setting themselves up as the economic center of this multi-billion-dollar industry. And we have all the infrastructure and facilities that Charleston has. We're just behind the ball. And there's no reason that we should miss out on the economic opportunities that brings, in addition to the clean energy benefits. So from a personal standpoint, however, the strongest language that we can successfully get within the agenda to advocate for offshore wind being included in the state's renewable energy portfolio and being part of our economic development plan here, that would be my priority for the legislative agenda. Now, obviously, everyone else, feedback on that, different ideas, everything's
Yeah,
welcome.
I'll add a bullet point to this. The state of energy in North Carolina is growing. The demand is growing. It's being driven by data center growth. It's being driven by manufacturing growth, more manufacturing coming into the state, new existing manufacturing growing. And obviously we have this carbon plan that's pushing for the need for cleaner energy. And, I've always been a believer of clean energy. As you heard me talk before, I know we know natural gas has to be part of it. We shouldn't be building new coal plants in this state, and when there's an opportunity to decommission them and replace them with natural gas, if that's what's needed for the grid, that is what it is. But the two things that I think are important when we look at this energy going forward is we can't compromise on reliability in the state. It's important for businesses. It's super critical for businesses to have reliable power. So while we make this transition, we have to make sure that we have a continuous focus on reliability. House Bill 951 actually says it in it says it in there that you can't compromise on reliability. So I think we need to continue to advocate on that behalf, but we also have to do it at a reasonable price, right? Not at all costs, right? It's got to be least cost, and to tie least cost in what we've advocated in this group is energy efficiency. There are so many opportunities for energy efficiency. Duke Energy does not make a single dollar when you do energy efficiency projects because they don't get a rate of return. And so we need to potentially avoid overbuilding the network and continue to harp on energy efficiency, at least in where we can control it, right? Where there are opportunities for us to go to communities and help them with energy efficiency, fine. But where we can control it within the city limits of our own properties, we need to be advocating on those things. So, that portfolio that Sean talks about, it could be solar, or Rich is talking about, it could be solar, it could be wind. But we need to make sure that reliability, and it's got to be affordable.
PJ, from the energy efficiency standpoint, do you feel like that's something that needs to be advocated for on a state and federal level, or more within the city organization?
Well, for city property, obviously that's something we could stay within the city. At the state level, it's something that benefits the larger community, and we need to continue to push our legislators, whether it's the House members or the Senate members, that we need to continue to invest in energy efficiency opportunities, right? We said this thousands of times now, the cleanest electron is the one that you don't use. And we are using electrons right now because Duke Energy is not incentivized to reduce our energy consumption. They don't make money when you reduce your load, but they get 9.8% rate of return for every dollar they spend. So they're incentivized to build.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Can I read something to you to get your response? Support exploration of the Bureau of Energy Management's plan for the Wilmington East offshore wind lease and transformational economic development opportunities for the region.
Yep.
That sounds good. I'm curious, does the chamber have a strong position on the offshore wind? And where are the city council members?
I know the Sorry, Jessica, do you mean the city chamber of commerce or the state?
I mean, no, the local chamber of county.
It is a part of their legislative agenda for 2024. It was a part of.
It
their
is, okay.
It is traditionally.
Has city council, and it was on our agenda for last year, city council's on board with it all. I'm just hearing the words about how Charleston is eating our lunch, and I'm like, all right, so where are our local people on it? Are they on it?
I can't speak to the views of individual council members.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We can say that there hasn't been much of an effort that I'm aware of where we've tried to put this issue in front of them for discussion or outreach and education opportunities.
So,
Is that a fair
so
statement?
From this group.
Not from,
No,
well,
Right,
just
I'm-
in
there has
general.
not been.
They
Not
have
from-
received some briefings as a council.
Okay.
on this. I'm not aware of any. Does this group have an educational component for council at all?
we would certainly like to.
we produce an annual report that gets presented to council once a year.
Gotcha.
So I think there's two components of Rich's statement that need to be unpackaged a little bit. One is for advocating of wind in our region, right? Specifically, the Wilmington East property off of Bald Head Island. Then and future potential development. But the second part is the economical impact of utilizing the city of Wilmington, whether it's the port, whether it's GE, whether it's new suppliers coming in town, to supply the whole East Coast of wind technology deployments.
One of the big things that Charleston is utilizing is their port will be one of the main inload offload points for all this equipment that's going to the different points offshore. To answer your question for a response to that statement, I support the statement. The only concern I have with it is that the first part said, I think support BOEM's exploration of a lease or their plan for the lease.
I had put support exploration of the Bureau of Energy Management's plan for the Wilmington East offshore one.
My only concern with that is if the BOEM's position changes, that does not necessarily mean ours does.
Mhm.
That's
a good
my
point.
only,
That's a
that's
good
my only
point.
concern with that is that with the, as you said, with the federal change in the government, if then that office changes their position on the lease, that doesn't necessarily change how this committee feels about it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it just also includes just the job creation aspect. I know that's kind of part of economic development, but
That's the way I always try and frame these is that, you know, the greenness of energy a lot of times is a partisan issue. But the economics is typically people see green one way, you know, dollars one way or another. And so I've found just in my personal work that like the most successful way to move the needle is to talk about the dollars rather than the turbines, the carbon. That can be a red or blue issue. Green dollars they're universal.
But Rich, we really don't care of the source, right? We don't care if it's hydro, tidal, wind, solar. I mean, yes, we advocate for something locally, both useful as well as economic drivers. But at the end of the day, it has to either be low carbon or it has to be no carbon. Which brings me to my other question is, hey, SMR, small modular reactors are, I think Microsoft, Amazon, and maybe Meta just signed an agreement. Maybe it was Google just signed an agreement to put small modular reactors, cogens, or co-located with their data centers. And the business up the road from us, GE, is getting ready to be, I mean, if they play their cards right, they have a huge card in this. So, when we talk about wind and the economic impacts to Wilmington for wind, we could also be seeing the same thing with nuclear.
I agree, PJ. I mean, we definitely should advocate for, doesn't matter where it comes from, so long as it's green. My focus on wind is more that I think that Wilmington is in a unique position to be an advocate, because of our location and our involvement kind of being central to that, with one of the leases being within our area, and with us having the port that has the capability of actually capitalizing on some of those economic gains. I'm not by any means saying that we should advocate for wind at the exclusion of others. I just think that we're in a position to where the implementation of wind energy has more of an outsized effect on us, and so it should be more of an outsized focus for us as well.
I had a question for Dave. Didn't you have someone who you knew who was on the towers that you were gonna potentially invite to our meeting?
Carly Lohan, do you know her?
Or- Yeah, I know her, but
Yeah.
Dave Mays, didn't you have someone else too that you knew? Thought that
It
was
was someone that I interacted with at the State Energy Conference. They have since left the lobbying industry that they were part of in DC.
okay. Just because I've seen some, I think they're having they maybe just had their second or about to have their second, like, one day, NC Industries meeting about offshore wind. And just curious if many companies near us in Wilmington were involved. But anyways, okay, thanks.
So moving forward, the two items we brought up are obviously advocating for renewable energy, possibly with a focus on wind, and advocating for further and continued implementation of energy efficiency. Do we have anything else we would want to see on the legislative agenda? Is there any discussion about the two items that we brought up? Let me get the committee's thoughts on what you guys would like to see, how you want to move this forward. Because obviously we don't want to miss the boat, and try and play catch up. So tell me what your thoughts are. Do we need to add something else? How do you feel about the two things that we have discussed already? And what kind of further action do you think the committee needs to take before we can vote on something to provide Cara with?
I go back to what I said when I was talking about energy efficiency. We cannot have this.
You're breaking up, PJ.
Says bill that says that, and also I think there's a cost component, right? It's got to be affordable.
Can you say that again? You were breaking up at the start.
When we talk about, I said when I was talking about energy efficiency, I said I want to make sure we don't lose the focus that it's got to be. We cannot lose reliability through this transition, and we also have to ensure it's affordable. So
Correct.
whether we're asking for clean energy, wind, or anything else, it's got to be affordable at the end of the day. It's got to be a dimmer switch approach to make sure people can afford it.
Understood. Anyone else?
I like the opportunities you were talking about, specifically calling out offshore wind. But it would be great if we could also, and future, however we want to call it, potentially include like cogen or other things that maybe right now we don't have 100% of a pulse on.
Sure.
Because we don't know what's going to happen in the
future.
near future with some of those things. So there's probably some other opportunities there too, just to make it a little bit more inclusive.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree with Phyllis. I think it is important to say we don't know what's coming. And of course, we do this every year. There's an opportunity for update. But I was also thinking of something along the lines of support legislative action to broaden our state's energy strategy and keep energy prices as affordable as possible.
With Councilman Joyner on committee, as you mentioned, and with us, we have a goal to electrify our city fleet as well. Is there an area in there where you see some
For the transportation side of it.
the transportation side of things? We could,
Ooh, when you say you have a goal to electrify the city's fleet, is there a timeline associated with that?
50% of the fleet by 2035.
What are we at now?
We have two.
Two vehicles.
We're 11 years away from that.
Okay, okay.
And,
we're
and a
at-
fleet of about 700-ish vehicles. So,
Did you say as technology allows? Did you say that?
we could do 50% of our fleet without,
Any increase in technology.
Oh, yeah. The second part of the goal is 100% by 2050 as technology allows.
Okay, so maybe consider having a clean transportation reference in our,
yeah, if there's something that we could provide some language or,
general support for clean transportation initiatives that may be coming.
correct.
Got it.
My only hesitation to your comment of broadening our state's energy portfolio is there are many ways that you could do that in a non-green way. You can, we could broaden the amount of fracking we do, and we could start implementing a lot of hydrogen stuff that requires a ton of natural gas to synthesize, to process the hydrogen. It's not as specific as I would like to see it, just relating to clean energy, renewable energy, low carbon, choose your adjective, options. And I know we have to package this in a way to make it palatable to everybody. At the same time, you also asked me for the genie in the bottle. And so my genie in the bottle is relatively specific and does not it's not as specific as I just want wind energy and forget everything else, but it is specific in that low carbon to no carbon options are what we should be advocating for, and not fracking natural gas, coal, fossil fuels, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's not a controversial statement for us us as a city to say that, since we've already adopted guidelines that say we are planning on doing that and that we support that. So I don't, I would question a city council member that has a problem with us saying that in the state of legislative agenda, when I said we've made it clear in our own municipal policy, government policy, that we will be 100% renewable by 2050. So obviously we're planning on doing that. So I don't know what the opposition to the support for it would be. But those are my thoughts.
Mhm. As I would just add that sometimes if things don't make it onto, say, a 10-point legislative agenda, it's not because they aren't the spirit of them, that they don't have the support amongst all council members. It's that perhaps because they've received attention and support in another way, such as by they clearly voted on that, right, already. So it does seem a little bit redundant to add it here and vote on it, or it could seem that way.
Sure.
But I do appreciate your understanding of the sensitivity of the importance of getting a unanimous decision on this and the sensitivity of the wording. Yeah.
Much to your point. Well, does anyone else have any other comments before we move on? I don't want to take all the time here.
I had one other thought in regards to just as you're talking about the sensitivity and the nature of this. When I was in grad school to be a teacher, a high school teacher, the mantra that we had was survive and subvert, because similar to clean energy, education is extremely, politically moves with the meter at this point with the legislation based on who's in office. Is there while you keep your goals the same and you keep your your overall messaging the same, is there any benefit to, I don't want to call it a rebrand, but is there a sense of like if something is called this, it's automatically on the chopping block because of who we have in office, versus even using words like sustainable instead of clean energy keeping the goals, like I'm saying, exactly the same, not changing course, pushing forward on everything else, but is there anything in terms of like a higher level terminology that we could use also that would help in putting everything else forward that we've talked about in this meeting today?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
She's asking like, there are buzzwords that make things partisan, right? There are triggering buzzwords in the
yes.
political spectrum.
Yes.
And I think Andrea's question is, are there other alternative terms that would not be so politically charged that we could utilize within the verbiage? Instead of saying green energy
yeah.
or clean energy, would something like sustainable play better to the masses, or
I tell you what,
carbon neutral or
you
whatever?
leave that to me,
Okay.
okay? So that'll be my job because it's up to me to find consensus, right, amongst council and move something like this forward. Don't worry too much about the phrasings because I can handle that on my end through, you know, understanding the nuanced positions of our individual council members. It's more important that we get the spirit of what Andrea and everybody here, you know, has expressed to me on paper, in some form or fashion. And I think it's important for any new items, something that doesn't have any kind of predecessor on a former agenda. I think it's important to insert them in their debut year with special attention given to the fact that it is new, it could be newsworthy, that we don't want to shock the citizens of Wilmington or make them feel that things are headed in a direction that is out of nowhere, right? So yeah,
So
I will
can
handle that.
I don't know if this is, I don't know that this is specifically in your wheelhouse, but like you touched perfectly on a concern of mine. And so maybe I'll float it to you. I don't know if you have feedback on it or not, but like that concern of like, we don't want the citizens of Wilmington to feel like they're kind of getting something out of nowhere. There's either that they're getting hit with these things, these changes suddenly. That is the main concern that I have with the city, not whether it's educational, informative, discussionary, whatever term you want to use. The city has not, as far as I can tell, engaged with an offshore wind discussion at all, despite our lease being this lease being within our kind of area of relevance. And so my desire is for the city to partake in some amount of outreach is one word, informational dissemination is another. Where you say like there has been a lease sold offshore for exploration of wind turbines in our area. And to your point, I think a lot of the citizens of Wilmington are going to be caught off guard by that. And the first person to say something to them about it
Owns the narrative.
is going to be the one that owns the narrative. So when a utility committee or a commodity company that doesn't want offshore wind here thinks of it first and says, look at these terrible things they're about to set up in your backyard, then Wilmington is the city of Wilmington and our community is automatically going to be on the defensive for this. And that's where I feel it's important for Wilmington to be proactive about this so that we are to Dave's point, the ones that own that narrative.
So let me ask you this, how often does this group interface with councils?
One time per year.
Okay. And,
This is an advisory group.
okay,
So they provide recommendations to staff and then we take them forward to council. But once a year, Rich is right, once a year is the opportunity where as the chair, Rich would present the annual report to city council.
Now, I have been instructed that annual report should basically contain no opinions and should be mostly, these are the things we have done, these are the things we are planning to do, and these are the things that we are working on.
and when will you deliver that, Rich?
That will be like January.
January, February, at this point.
Okay. And
Now-
so you would rely on others within the city to coordinate, say Carly Lohan's group coming in to participate in a Monday agenda briefing, 10-minute disposition on opportunities.
Correct. That's my understanding at least.
We would be doing that.
Now, I think this committee has made clear within our members that we're interested in the participation of city council. We welcome the opportunity to interface with city council. But it's a matter of it's not really our place to request their presence. Kind of thing. I've gotten the feeling as a citizen member of the committee that we don't exactly have like a direct channel to city council, where if we wanted to set up an information session that they were welcome to join, for what are the pros and cons of offshore wind, or like what is the state of this, or energy efficiency. You just bought a $70 million new building. What's the state of the energy efficiency in that building? We can give you some tips, some education on what to look for. I don't feel like we have some kind of avenue to present that to council.
We don't even know what the council members' agenda is, so we could focus our attention on what they think is important for either.
Correct. And that's, let me take a second and be clear, and that I am not trying to throw David or Dave under the bus in any meaning here. They do a fantastic job advocating for us and performing their duties, and et cetera, et cetera. I think they are working very as well as they can within the system. I'm just expressing, like, it seems to me that you've identified a hole that we feel we both have identified an issue that we don't.
I will say, like, probably the most important thing I've heard today, because all of this stuff is, we're going to be supporting these things in our legislative agenda, regardless of my participation in this meeting or not. The thing that's alarming that I'm hearing is, if anybody, you're all citizens of Wilmington, or you wouldn't be in this group. And I'm a citizen of Wilmington, and our city council as well. They all, if you feel somehow kept at arm's length from city council, if you feel that you don't have an opportunity to make your voices heard, that is not good, because they are your city council, and that is their job. And that is, as citizens, our job is to make our voices heard when we see the need for change. So I would say that regardless of your participation in this group, you should all know that we have public hearings every other Tuesday. And we have historically had people that were on different committees come of their own accord to voice their opinions and desires. And that is something that you can do. Now, that's the JV version. The varsity version is, if you wanted to advocate for the city incorporating a briefing that is educational, nonpartisan educational briefing, then that conversation is something that I want to have with you, because we do have a long history of doing Monday morning agenda. If you're not aware, every other Tuesday is our council meeting. The Monday before the council meeting, we have an agenda briefing, and that's kind of the long form rehearsal version. And that's an opportunity for us to have the experts come in and give the 101 and the 102 and the 103 versions of things. And we do that on a really regular basis. And we most recently did that with some PFAS folks that came to us from Durham, Chapel Hill, and UNCW. And I will also say that just because they aren't learning in front of you on Tuesday nights doesn't mean they're not learning, because I've been with these folks. Our council has been to meetings at EPA on wind energy in DC that I have witnessed. They have been to League of Municipality meetings and Metro Mayor meetings on wind energy. So it's not meaning, I don't want to imply that these people are starting from nothing, because they are receiving briefings on this, and I'm sure because of the interest will. But we can do that. We can arrange that. But you as citizens, oh my God, please know, they have to listen to you. They have a choice.
Well, and I think there's a difference. It's one thing for us to be able to contact them as a private citizen. I think as a committee, we feel that if they're soliciting our participation as a committee, they should be interested in our opinion as a committee as well.
Mhm.
Which is not to say that they're not, because when we make a recommendation, Dave and David pass it up to them and like you see on our agenda for action. But it's, you know, it's kind of like, it's a little silly to me that it's like they formed a committee to get opinions on clean energy. But if they want to hear those opinions, we should reach out to them as private citizens. Seems kind of like a misstep.
I think the key difference is what I'm talking about is an educational opportunity that is a presentation of raw data as opposed to a persuasive argument.
Sure.
So when we do provide them with those opportunities on Monday mornings, that's simply raw data, charts and graphs. Here's what we're working with. I imagine that when you brief council, it's probably a little bit more persuasive in tone.
Well, also remember, and this goes back to prior to the ad hoc task force.
Yeah.
The reason that was initiated by the mayor is because he heard from the citizens.
Sure.
That is the sole reason that whole task force started.
Sure.
Now, I understand I guess you're calling it a misstep, but that's just the way the committee has been arranged.
Right.
But if we can advocate for a Monday morning agenda briefing item on offshore wind or other clean energy initiatives.
I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it is a wonderful idea. And I think that Rich and I should actually find, and Dave, we will definitely find a time. I know that we've got some stacked Mondays going into the new year,
Sure.
but that needs to happen.
We got a whole year's worth to plan for.
Okay.
Well, and I think I don't think anyone in the committee would oppose, like you said, just the raw data. Me personally, I feel confident that the data speaks for itself. As long as they can understand it, they'll be behind it wholeheartedly, you know. So it doesn't need to be a persuasive argument, in my opinion. It can be entirely data driven from an expert, and they can
Yeah.
draw their own conclusions.
And we can talk about who that expert should
Yeah.
be and who is the best person to brief council. Mhm.
Sounds good. All right, we have 20 minutes left to fit in a couple more.
So sorry.
Items. No, you're perfectly fine.
okay.
This is entirely, yes, yes, this is the goal.
I feel like I heard a support behind offshore wind and or other clean energy resources. I heard support about energy efficiency without compromising on reliability or affordability.
Correct.
And I also heard Kara say to rely on her to be able to provide the proper wordsmithing needed so that she can incorporate those ideas into next year's legislative agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm happy to make a motion to put forth those two items to be entered, to be provided to Cara to try and enter into the legislative agenda for 2025. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Phyllis seconds. So we have to do a roll call vote because we have people on Zoom. So we'll start with people in the room. Rich Smith, aye.
Phyllis Goodson, aye.
Jessica Cannon, I.
John Sullivan, aye.
Andrea Bennett, aye.
Valjean Estes, aye.
PJ Klein, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. That's good.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anything else logistically, administratively that we need to do for that? Okay. Cara, I guess my request for you would be, once you have final verbiage for that, just shoot that over to us just so we can have it.
We will absolutely share, yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for your time today.
Yes,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Do you want me to see myself out or can I sit on the seat? I want to hear the next
You
item.
can, you're welcome.
Okay.
Yep. This has alarmed me a little bit in that, like, I feel like she has some information that we need to know before we vote on item number 2 about the CPACE.
No, I'm glad
Yeah,
you're.
let's-
Yeah, I want to hear all of it. Yeah.
All right, so moving on to item number 2 is the CPACE program, pardon me. So we have a draft of the toolkit here, and the action required from us is for us to vote on to recommend adoption of that resolution by the city council or not. Is there any feedback or discussion from anyone on that?
Did we get a response?
I was gonna provide some updates from our last meeting, just.
Sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, and one of the, PJ, one of your questions at our last meeting was, well, what's the county doing? So, yeah, we've been in touch with the county, and they are pushing this item up through their process as well. So far, their support has been positive as well. I think this week, they are presenting it to their board for their review feedback. You know, and I'm getting this information through communication with the county's new sustainability manager. In fact, I just had an email from her today, and just that the process is still moving along. So, yeah, bottom line is the support from the county has been positive as well so far, and hopefully they're gonna have this up for a vote in early January as well, kind of same time frame that we're looking at.
So I think the action from us is to say we support the county's efforts, right? We can't support a program without them, because it goes on the county's, it's on the county's lien, not the city's lien. So is the action for us just to tell the city council that we should have a resolution to support the county's efforts?
Well, there would still be some administrative aspects that would fall directly on the city. So, I mean, I think we're very much looking to support a resolution to go in front of our county, and go in front of our council as well, just to show the support, as well as be able to take care of those administrative aspects. There's actually like a reimbursement aspect as part of the toolkit. I don't know if y'all have had a chance to read through all of the details. I know it's a lot of information, but I think the toolkit is providing financial reimbursement back to the city for any of the administrative costs.
I mean, this supports the things that we just talked about in the legislative agenda, right? Energy efficiency and the ability to afford it gives them gives businesses and companies the ability to utilize their equity in their facilities, you know, to make these energy efficiency changes.
Yeah, it would reduce the load on the grid overall. You know, opportunity for us for the city to lead by example again, I don't think not sure there's anyone else in the state right now that's looking to do a resolution. I don't know if you heard any feedback last week on that, Kara.
I've heard that there are people that are going to start off the new year the same way we are by considering this. Mhm.
Good. Yeah, that's the updates I have since development last month. Yeah.
So you'd like to see a resolution that supports CPACE program within city council, within the city of Wilmington, within.
And there is some draft resolution language that's been included as part of the toolkit. We would probably try to utilize.
Okay. In that case, I'll make a motion. Is there any other discussions first? Not hearing any. In that case, I'll make a motion to make a recommendation to staff that we support the CPACE program implementation.
I second it.
Seconded. Okay, we have to do a roll call vote in person first. Rich Smith, aye.
Phyllis Goodson, I.
Jessica Cannon, I.
Sean Sullivan, aye.
Andrea Bennett, I.
Beljean Estes, I.
PJ Klein, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving quickly on to item number 3. The City of Wilmington Strategic Plan, FY 25 to FY 30 action, and I'll pass that back over to David for.
Excuse me.
Okay.
On my water with me. Yeah, just again, following up on last month's presentation by folks who drafted the plan, the strategic plan. Hopefully y'all got an opportunity to kind of look through items again and just and really want to bring it up for discussion and potential vote, what areas we see commonality in regard to achieving some of our clean energy goals, as well as, what ties in with the actions that the work groups are going to be working on. What can we provide a comment on that's going to tie in and, help us achieve some of our goals. So I'm trying to get sorry, the agenda packet is so long. This month there's quite a few pages to toggle through, but if there are some areas that you guys saw some commonalities, would love to hear the discussion around that and what y'all would recommend us bringing back to the work groups to include in some of the focus areas.
And there's much less of a burden on y'all for a timeline for
On this.
Yeah, I mean, don't feel pressured to come up with an answer in the next 7.
Yeah, I said that there was a committee action on this one as far as a vote, but we can always
That's eventual.
we can always continue this to the next meeting as well. We'll love to hear some of y'all's initial thoughts on that strategic plan.
I was just looking at what we wrote last year for the state and federal agenda strategic plan, and we did have a comment that seems like it's just a repeat from this plan, unless I'm looking at the wrong document, but we just wanted to change item 3 from creating a safe, healthy, and engaged community to creating a sustainable community that is safe, environmentally healthy, socially responsible, and economically prosperous.
Yeah, I think you're still on the state and federal agenda
Am I?
item. Yeah. So this is the that's all right. This is the as I said, the packet is very thick this month, so we had a lot to discuss. This is
I'm looking for it.
This is for the city's strategic plan from FY 25 to FY 30.
Okay.
So yeah.
What page is it on? Am I looking?
This is
I guess I need to start numbering all of our pages, but it's
So tell me, what is the difference between strategic plan reimagine FY 25 to FY 30 and strategic plan FY 25 to FY 30?
this is the hard copies that they brought to us our last meeting in October, right?
Anything. You have this and you have this.
they're the same things, just one's more of a
Condensed.
pager. Yes.
Yeah, there's a little bit more intent built into the first. Yeah,
The second, the one further back in policy or in the packet is a bit more detailed.
I would suggest that maybe the members of the committee want another couple weeks to look over this. Before we make any recommendations. Anyone else have any feedback? I mean, I'll just be honest that I haven't had the time to look through this thoroughly yet.
That's fair. Can you?
Yes.
Okay, we'll continue. We'll slate this for next month. The only thing left then is, David, you have some updates for us on the sustainable building policy and the NC carbon plan electric vehicles.
Yeah, well, the resolution for the building policy passed at last week's committee meeting. So it's now a resolution and
Very nice.
effective date of last Wednesday. So going forward, all new construction and major renovation.
Now, keep in mind that, because this question did come up, it's related to when the project gets funded. There are things in the pipeline right now that have previously been funded
Understood.
that are not subject to the policy.
Sure.
An example, a very relevant example, is the improvements that are going to happen inside of this building.
Sure.
We stated that to the council, so they understood that
They don't
those
have to go
improvements
back and
are not
redo.
subject to this policy.
Understood.
The other thing that I will say as well is we've been working on another facility design. We've been at it for 4 or 5 years, where we are pursuing LEED Silver. And I'm sure the question will come up, why are you pursuing LEED Silver on a project that is not subject? Because technically that project is not subject to this policy because it was funded 5 years ago.
Correct.
The answer is that's because we made that conscious decision to do so.
Very
So,
good.
but anything going forward that falls under the applicability, which is city owned and city occupied. So a very important distinction that was necessary to make sure that the council understood it and supported it.
Very good.
Another change in there was we had that waiver aspect that was initially set at 10%.
Correct.
That actually got bumped up to 14%. So,
Excellent.
yeah, overall, cause for celebration here. I was glad that, y'all helped us push over the finish line. So, yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
Yes.
Thanks for continued effort.
That was a long time,
Yeah.
but we got there.
It's a good one.
The next item I had on there was just, and PJ's touched on it a bit already, just the newly released Duke Carbon Integrated Resource Plan. PJ, I welcome you to chime in with any additional information you think's relevant there, but just some of the takeaways from it were hitting some of the targets got pushed back a little bit. I think from 2034 PJ to 2035, some of the early achievement goals in the plan. One of the big changes in there was just the increase in grid demand that they're projecting over, the coming years. I think they bumped it up in 2022 with their projected amount, and since 2022 they bumped it up again for how much electricity grid demand there's going to be in the coming years. And PJ spoke to that a little bit with increase in data centers and manufacturing and electric vehicles and things like that are becoming on the grid. So there were some positives in there. I think there was increase in offshore and onshore wind development.
Yeah.
So there were definitely some give and takes with this carbon plan. Trying to think of some other PJ. Do you have any additional aspects you want to chime in on in regard to the plan?
What I haven't heard yet is if anyone's gonna appeal the decision any of the decisions made. I don't know. I don't remember if it was 30 days or had to have been. It's either 30 or 60 days. So, be interested to see that. There were a couple of things in the carbon plan that I found the order to be strange in that they allowed them to go out and spend money, but then said, come back to us so we can evaluate it. And that, if they end up changing their mind, then that's going to be lost cost. Or they've spent money on doing things. SMRs are in there. They are going to fund some advanced nuclear reactor, at least one. Yeah, there was no like huge shocks out of the carbon plan, the IRP, nothing earth shattering. It was as expected.
Yeah, the new gas plant build outs. Yeah. So just so the committee is, staying aware of, things again happening at the state level with Duke Energy. We continue to, I sit in on the weekly call in regard, it's sponsored by the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, just their updates each week. So as much as just another area, it feels like I've got to have some broad knowledge around is just what's happening at the utility level.
I think the State Energy Conference is going to be interesting this year. So see what
That's
happens.
Always a good one to attend. I don't know. Do you go to that one?
No, do you? When is it?
Usually in April,
April, yep.
probably McKimmon Center at NC State.
And last one.
Last item, we have 2 EVs, which you guys already know. Now we have the charging infrastructure, so they're fully functional. They drove one here today, so we've cracked the ice in our EV fleet. So hopefully that's just the beginning. What else do we have to add there? We're finalizing review of the RFPs that we received for the fleet transition strategy. Hope to have that vendor selected and working early next year.
Excellent. Sounds good.
That's all I have.
All right. In that case, meeting is adjourned. Thanks everyone for your time. We'll see you next month.